Hello, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and welcome to B-Dunk's Astrology. My name is Becky. I am your host and your guide for this week's astrological forecast for the week of November 16th to the 22nd, 2020. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much for checking it out and welcome. If you have not already done so, it would be awesome if you could hit the subscribe and like button. Wherever you're tuning into this, if you're tuning into this on the podcast as well, if you could subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, that would be great. I would really appreciate the support. As mentioned, this is a forecast for the week of November 16th. We have a lot of Venus action going on this week, a lot of Scorpio energy as well happening. I think it's going to be an up and down kind of week. Ultimately, I really think it will depend on the state of where we're at right now in life, where we're at with our relationships, where we're at with our finances, our resources, our spending habits, where we're at with a lot of the basic, practical, foundational matters of our life. I feel like this is a bit of a check-in week. There are a lot of planets shifting signs, so there is a lot of energy shift happening, but predominantly there is a lot of Scorpio energy still lingering in the air. But towards the end of the week, the sun is going to be entering Sagittarius, so that is definitely going to bring in a different vibe. So let's jump in and see what we have for the week. The week starting off on November 16th, Venus is making a square with Jupiter. She's also technically still making a square with Pluto as well, since yesterday on the 15th, Jupiter and Pluto made a conjunction. And so Venus is sitting at 23 degrees of Libra, while Jupiter is sitting at 23 degrees of Capricorn. I think this is a really great socializing aspect. It's going to bring in a lot of community type energy, and it's going to make us want to get out there and socialize and expand our social circles. Especially, I think, particularly with people of different cultures or different backgrounds or different beliefs. Jupiter has a lot to do with those types of elements. So I think combining that with Venus, the sign of relationships, I think that's something that we're going to be open to around this time, especially with the transforming energy of Pluto getting in touch there as well too. I think, especially if this is something that we don't normally do, if we normally stick to people that are more like us, we might benefit from and enjoy the process of getting to know different types of people. If you are single and dating around this time, I think this is a really positive aspect for the dating pool in terms of finding new and exciting people who have a larger than life type quality to them. However, because Jupiter is all about expansion and growth and making things big, we will want to be mindful just to not lower our standards at all just for the sake of making a connection, or not compromise our values acting out of impulse. Because this might lead us into some situations that we might not enjoy later on, or might not be able to get ourselves out of later on, or might even just make us blush and might embarrass us a bit. As mentioned, Jupiter is a really good luck, fortuitous type of planet that expands and makes things bigger, whatever it comes into contact with. And when it comes into contact with Venus, who is representative of beauty and the finer things in life and art and expressive creative outlets, and with the square aspect being truly a challenging aspect, but really also an aspect of creation, an aspect of potential. I think this is going to open up a door for a lot of us to act out on and explore a lot of the creative outlets that we really enjoy the most. I don't think this is necessarily the kind of energy that is meant to be used for hard work or like getting things done that aren't necessarily the most enjoyable for us. Really like taking care of responsibilities. But I think this is more of an energy where it's a leisurely energy where we really want to just sit back and enjoy ourselves and enjoy the people that we love the most. Spend time doing the things that we value the most and spend time with the people that we value the most. That is Venus. There's a lot of charitable energy with this aspect as well, since that's what Jupiter represents, is very much an altruistic, charitable generosity. So we will be feeling rather generous with both our time and our resources and our energy and our love. And we ourselves might even feel a little greedy and need a little bit of TLC ourselves. Although, again, this is not necessarily a time to jump too quickly into things. This is the type of aspect where we need to be cognizant of the fact that all that glitters is not necessarily gold. So we'll just want to have our wits about us in that regard. Especially because, again, with Jupiter being the expander and Venus representing, she does represent material possessions and finances and money. And with the square aspect, again, being a bit more of a challenging aspect, there is a potential for some of us to, especially if you already have the propensity to overindulge in some of the finer things in life, there is a chance for some of us to go overboard in this regard. Overdoing the things that bring us pleasure. So whether that's eating, drinking, drugs, sex, TV, these types of things that really should be enjoyed in moderation. We'll just want to be mindful to not go overboard in these types of indulgences. Again, though, I think ultimately this energy is best used to devote our time and efforts to creative outlets, to the outlets that bring us the most joy and pleasure in life. The kind of outlets that get us into a state of flow, a flow state where it feels like time has stopped almost. On November 17th, Mercury is going to be making an opposition with Uranus. Mercury is going to be sitting in Scorpio at this time, while Uranus is still sitting retrograde in Taurus. And this is actually the third opposition that Mercury and Uranus have made throughout 2020. The first one that we saw was on October 7th, and then Mercury went retrograde and then made another opposition to Uranus on October 19th. And now here on November 17th, they are making their third and final opposition, with the opposition being an aspect of awareness. So themes that we saw around those dates, we could be seeing a culmination or a closing point or a fruition of these elements, these themes, these situations that we've been dealing with when it comes to Mercury-Uranus opposition qualities, which I'll just get into now. So as I've explained before on previous podcast episodes, Mercury in Scorpio is a detective. Extremely insightful, it is astute and it's alert, it's able to sniff out bullshit. It's able to penetrate beyond a superficial layer and get down to the deep, raw truth of the matter. And Uranus and Taurus energy is all about innovative and unexpected, shocking type changes to the practical and domestic areas of our life. The areas that normally provide us with a sense of safety and stability. And so an opposition, again, is a calling of awareness to the two opposing forces, the inability to bridge the two forces. And so with this, a lot of us could feel internally conflicted, internally at odds with ourselves, almost like there's this tug of war going on inside of us. And this tug of war is a mental stress because it's Mercury, it's our thinking mind. So it's a mental stress. It's a tension on our mind of having to always shift our focus between focusing on taking care of practical matters with having to adapt to all of the unexpected and consistent changes we're experiencing, and then shifting our focus into our heads and into our minds and being able to mentally process all of it. Because at the same time, we are feeling pulled by Mercury and Scorpio to find out what is really going on. And any time that Mercury and Uranus get together, it does tend to increase the speed of our thoughts. It does increase our anxious energy. So a lot of us could have a really overactive mind during this transit. And again, with Mercury and Scorpio, I think there's going to be this sixth sense, this intuitive internal knowing that a lot of us are going to have, that there's still like this missing secret, this missing piece of information, this missing puzzle piece that we have yet to find and yet to get a hold of or figure out. And that is the missing piece that's preventing us really from establishing a sense of safety, a sense of security, preventing us from taking the practical steps to get that sense of safeguarded home. Taurus is associated with the second house, and the second house is material possessions and resources, really. So our possessions, our money, our finances, but it goes even beyond that. Our resources could even mean our time, our energy. And these are all the things that are being called to be revised right now. with Uranus sitting retrograde in Taurus. So we're being called to revise and review the way that we are spending our resources. And so again, with this opposition, I think it's calling us to become aware of this internal conflict and not allowing this internal conflict to veer us off course and stress us out. Because while both of these opposing forces both are of equal importance and feel like we need to devote equal time and energy to, constantly focusing on the fact that we have to toggle between the two is going to cause us even more unnecessary stress. It's almost as if like we're neglecting one side of us if we're paying too much attention to one or the other. So maybe we're too much in our heads lately. Mercury and Scorpio, maybe we're digging too hard for truths and sniffing out stuff where stuff may not even be there. Or maybe we're paying too much attention to the news lately and too much to the headlines lately, and maybe that's getting to us. Or maybe we're allowing ourselves to fall way too deep into some conspiracy theories lately. That is very Mercury and Scorpio as well. And again, these are all things that pull us away from being able to focus on practical matters, focus on Taurus matters, and keep us way too in our heads and out of the real world. And this in itself is draining. It's exhausting. It's mentally exhausting, and then it will be physically exhausting ultimately too. Alternatively, some of us could be focusing way too much on the real world practical matters and not leaving any quiet time for ourselves to sit with ourselves and introspect. Time to sit with ourselves and actually sit and reflect and be with our emotions. That's very much a Scorpio thing. And especially the more hard, intense emotions, which have likely been bubbling up throughout this Scorpio season. So maybe a lot of us are finding that a lot of skeletons are coming out of the closet. A lot of intense, difficult emotions are coming up, and we are not comfortable with dealing with them or feeling them. And so we are trying to keep ourselves as distracted as possible by just doing things, practical things, taking care of practical matters, like I said. And these are all keeping us from paying attention to our emotions, which may be trying to really tell us something. So again, with an opposition, I think this is a call and an opportunity for us to have some internal awareness in order to reach a sense of internal compromise, rather than stressing ourselves out and creating unnecessary anxiety by trying to focus too much on one thing or the other and then feeling guilty about focusing on one thing too much than the other. It is an opportunity for us to find some sort of balance, some sort of compromise between the two. And really, it is a call for us to be intentional with our resources, intentional with our time and our energy and our focus. And so whenever we do feel this internal conflict, it's comforting in a way to just know that that is really our subconscious just telling us like, hey, something's out of balance here. There's a course correction that needs to be done here. One thing I think that's going to be important to all of us throughout this Mercury-Uranus opposition is this concept of freedom of speech. This has been a big thing, I think, this year in general. And we're going to be hyper aware of anything or anyone that tries to take that away from us or threatens our freedom of speech. We're going to be rebellious against it. That's Uranus. Freedom of thought and freedom of speech is very important for Mercury-Uranus contacts. And again, with an opposition making us hyper aware of wherever any imbalances have occurred, we're going to be quick to want to correct these imbalances and take back our freedom of speech, whether the imbalance was self-created or not. However, with this being said, we will want to take a little bit of precaution when it comes to socializing with others today and communicating with others in general, especially if we have to communicate with people that do require a little bit more respect when it comes to communicating with them. Just because, again, Uranus is the rebellious maverick archetype, and when he gets into an opposition with Mercury, the communicator, the way we communicate, it could make us unaware of the sudden innovative, rebellious thoughts that we have that we want to communicate quickly and just say out and blurt out, but we may not have thought it through fully before we said it. So we just don't want to cause any issues for ourselves later on down the road. And so we just want to think before we speak today. This isn't the greatest energy for getting hard work done that requires focus and patience. Our attention span is going to be low. Our self-discipline is going to not be as sharp, and our minds are going to be all over the place. So I don't think this is the best type of energy to have to take care of serious responsibilities that require like stern focus and patience, because we're probably going to be flitting from one thing to the next. So I think a great way to negate this is to maybe take on learning something new. Again, Mercury has a lot to do with the way that we learn. So and Uranus is innovative and rebellious. So thinking in new ways and learning in new ways could be something we'd explore as well, but also learning about new topics, maybe learning a new language. Mercury could be language. So learning a new language, or just something that will keep our interest. Maybe even crack open a new book, or read a new different type of book that you wouldn't normally read. Or even take on some puzzles if you enjoy crossword puzzles or something like that. That's a good activity to do today too. And lastly, it's going to be important if we have any sort of travel plans in place to just double check them right now. There is a likelihood with Uranus and Mercury, because Mercury is associated with short distance travel and Uranus is unexpected change. So there is a potential for our travel plans to be affected and afflicted and change suddenly. So we just want to double check our itineraries, double check our bookings, and make sure that everything is set and still all good to go before we get on the road. On November 19th, the Sun is going to be making a sextile with Saturn. The Sun is sitting in Scorpio right now, and Saturn is sitting in Capricorn, who is also actually conjunct the Moon today at the same time. This aspect offers us a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility. We're going to be taking ourselves more seriously in general, our identities, our the way that we are represented. That's very much the Sun. The Sun is our identity, our sense of self. And with the Moon mixing in here, I think we're going to have the emotional perseverance and the patience really to meet and accomplish our goals. And Saturn, again, being authority and government, this is excellent energy to make use of to reestablish a sense of self-governance and self-authority. Especially if lately you find that you have been giving your authority away a lot lately. If you've been giving your power away to other people or other situations, this could be anything from allowing people to make decisions for you all the time, small decisions like, hey, let's go eat here. No, I don't want to eat there. Okay. Like maybe you're a bit of a doormat in that way. It's a harsh way to put it, but I don't know what else to call it. Maybe we have been allowing people to walk all over us lately. Maybe we've even been letting ourselves down in a way of we're giving our authority and our power away to bad habits and bad tendencies. Any areas of our life where we feel like we've lost control, where we feel like we have no control. This is the kind of transit that allows us to take that control back. And this energy is going to very much support us in doing so. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do not get me wrong. There is a lot of fear involved with stepping into power and stepping into authority. And especially with Saturn being involved, Saturn represents our fear. So there could be a big element of fear of our own authority or fear of authority and power. You know, maybe this whole time we are okay with giving our power away. Maybe we are okay with not having a lot of responsibilities on our plate. Maybe we're okay with allowing other people and situations to make our decisions for us. And maybe we're okay with just throwing in the towel and not fighting against every single external force that seems to be attempting to thwart our every single move. This, I find in my personal experience though, is usually because we're scared. We have this fear of, again, stepping into our own power. Because when we finally step into our own power, we are living our most authentic selves. And I think, again, there is a big fear surrounding that. Our society has told us since 50 years plus ago that we have never been good enough, or all like the media is always trying to sell us a new product to make us prettier, better, smarter, stronger, whatever it may be. And there's always just this continuous message that we are never enough and we're never good enough. And so when we live authentically, we don't think it's enough. And so we're scared to show who we truly are. We're afraid to live our lives through our most authentic self-expression. And ultimately, we are afraid of change. We're comfortable in our current discomforts because at least it's familiar. It's something that we know. At least we know we can handle it. And at least we know that we're not going to be judged for it and ridiculed for it. And we're not going to be critiqued if we try to do anything more and then mess up. But at some point, we have to ask ourselves, is that really the kind of life we want to live? We all have a choice ultimately about how we want to live our lives. But I think, again, this is a really fortuitous aspect between the sun, the moon, and Saturn that allows us, those of us who especially have been giving our power away too much, especially to sources that are less than deserving of, to recognize that, to at least become aware of it, because awareness is ultimately the first step. And at least when you become aware of it, then you have more of you can make more of an informed choice for yourself. And you can actually go ahead and start seeking out any sort of change if you do ultimately want to change anything. Ultimately, this is the kind of energy that is a go-getter type energy. It's going to allow us to get shit done and achieve our goals. And a lot of us are probably going to feel a little lazy or even disappointed in ourselves if we aren't doing something right now in that direction, in some sort of direction where we're bettering ourselves in a way. We will be very determined and very practical in our work ethic. And we are going to persevere. We're going to be willing to do some hard work to get the job done and get the job done right. And we probably won't accept anything less. Because there really is a sense of leadership and ownership with this energy as well. So we are going to be taking a lot of ownership for ourselves and our lives. Also on the 19th, Venus is making a square with Saturn. And so again, Venus, the feminine, the yin, the female archetype, who strives for harmonious connection whilst especially sitting in her home sign of Libra, making a challenging square to the commitment-driven and responsible Saturn in Capricorn. So I think our relationships could face some stress with this aspect. I think this square is ultimately demanding us to put some hard work into our relationships, to put some effort into the relationships and the areas in those relationships where we may have been slacking lately and we haven't been doing our part, where we haven't been fair and honorable and reciprocal. Venus-Saturn aspects tend to bring in a make it or break it type vibe. And there's this sternness to the way that we approach our relationships. And so if there are relationships that we have right now in our life that maybe aren't the most fair, or they're not cutting it for us now, they may not be all that we thought at first, or maybe some of these relationships or certain aspects of our relationships just flat out are not working for us anymore and are no longer serving us, and we are ready to be rid of it. And I think with this aspect is definitely going to be a time where we see the cords cut on these relationships. And also too, I think this is a good time to take stock, do a bit of an inventory of your relationships. Relationships not only with romantic partners and friends and family, but also again to the things that we value and find worth in, that is Venus. And so what people, what passions, what projects, what things do we value, and what of those do we really want to hold on to and make time and energy and space for in our life? And then once we have all of that figured out, we got to start doing the work. The square is an aspect of results. It's two energies coming together at a 90-degree angle, and that's an angle of creation and fruition. And again, with this being a make it or break it type energy, I think this is going to be a time where we see whatever that is meant for us will stay, and what is meant to go will go. There's a potential here with this energy for some of us to be rather critical when it comes to our perception of beauty. And so this could manifest as us being overly critical of ourselves, our appearance, or other people's appearance even. We might want to watch our tongue and just not say anything. This is also the kind of aspect that will make us feel like we need proof of love. Simply knowing that we are loved will not be enough for some of us right now. We will need some sort of tangible evidence of that love. And this is almost an attempt to control our love. That's Saturn controlling our Venus, our love. Saturn being the controlling element here. And I think this could potentially stem from past traumas, past wounds where we feel like we may have not received the type of love that we needed in the past. And some present situations might be bringing some of that stuff back up for us right now. So that's just something for us to be aware of too. Our money and our finances could also take a hit with this aspect, but I think it could be potentially a good hit if we use this energy wisely. Saturn offers us a sense of discipline and responsibility. And so if we can use this drive and apply this to our finances, I think we can really get a lot of good stuff done for us, especially we're approaching a really uncertain economic time. So I think this is going to be a really wise time to restructure our finances. Saturn is structuring. So going over our finances and just making sure that everything is in good order and we're setting ourselves up so that we are safeguarded and we can get ahead of a curve that might potentially rock us. And so I think, again, if we can apply some intention and some forethought to these matters as well, it will be a really good thing for a lot of us. On November 21st, Venus is going to be shifting signs and entering the sign of Scorpio. And so some themes with Venus in Scorpio: the power of love, obsessive and compulsive affection, relationship catastrophes and intense confrontations within our relationships, transforming our appearance and beauty and influence, putting money and energy into beauty and our appearance, themes of money and power. You could also see some intense romantic adventures, passionate sexual tension and intense love and competition even, jealousy and envy, and also themes of assertion and compromise. And now we also have the Sun and Mercury and Venus now sitting in the sign of Scorpio. Plus we had the new moon in Scorpio this past weekend. So there's a lot of Scorpio vibes still going on in the air. The Sun has been in Scorpio since October 23rd. Mercury is spending a whopping 2 months in the sign of Scorpio, where normally he spends about 3 weeks in one sign. He first went into Scorpio back in September, but then he retrograded back into Libra and then went back into Scorpio. So we have a really intense Mercury and Scorpio energy to deal with over the course of September, October. And as if our relationships have not been taking enough hits, these next 4 weeks of Venus and Scorpio, I think, are going to bring a lot of action into the area of our relationships. And not just romantic relationships, again, Venus is really about the way that we connect to things, the way that we feel and establish connection. So again, to other people, but to the world around us, to ourselves. A connection to the things in life that make us feel supported and the things that we find beauty in and appreciate in life and the things that give us an appreciation for life in general. I think this Venus and Scorpio energy is going to cause a lot of us to crave really intense, deep, meaningful, emotional connection in our relationships. So this is a great time to also deepen existing relationships too, or to let go of dying relationships that may seem to already be dying off. Scorpio represents death, so maybe this is a time that we see some of these relationships just die off. Scorpio also represents rebirth though, and so we know that whatever dies off just makes room for something new to come into our lives. And speaking of new things coming into our lives, I think this is also a good time to look at the way in which we make new connections, especially with everything going on lockdown and socializing being such a task. What are the ways that we have been going about making new friends and making new connections? How do we go about initiating relationships? Our appearance could also undergo some sort of transformation or revamp right now, since Venus represents beauty and appearance and the way that we make ourselves appear to the world and the way that we attract other people. I think too, on a more spiritual note and on a grander scale, Venus in Scorpio to me represents the rebirth and the rise of the feminine energy, the feminine power, the feminine archetype, the feminine polarity. She is the yin of the yin and the yang, the nurturer, the receiver, the mother archetype, the one that receives, the more inwardly drawn, It's the negative polarity of the positive negative poles. And when I say positive and negative, I don't necessarily mean inherently good or bad, but more like a battery where there's a positive side and a negative side. The feminine would be the negative side that receives. And it's all a part of a balance and essential duality of this world that we live in. And I think this is a time, this is a calling. There's been a massive calling this entire year, really, for us to get in touch with our feminine sides. Start going inward more for the answers instead of always seeking outwardly. To recognize and to allow that feminine intuition, that feminine power within us, and allow that feminine wisdom and that feminine mothering, nurturing archetype to guide us and support us through these massive changes and upheavals as we go through really a huge paradigm shift. There is so much power in the feminine archetype. We definitely think that, yes, while she is soft and nurturing and loving, the feminine, think of a mother lion, though. There is also this fierceness. When her cubs are threatened, she will kill to defend and protect her children. So there is definitely a power and a fierceness and a fighting spirit with the feminine archetype as well. And I think if more of us were to allow ourselves to fall into our feminine side more, especially when we live in a predominantly masculine driven world where it's always go, it's always on, it's always hustle and go and work and do and achieve, and where we're made to feel like if we aren't busy, we aren't succeeding in life. It's perpetuating this issue of millions of us becoming burnt out and sick and depressed and ultimately overstressed and overworked. And again, I think if we were to allow ourselves to fall into the feminine more, we would understand the importance of slowing down and stopping and creating more space in our lives for things to come to us as opposed to always having to go out and get and do. And again, I think if more of us were to take a feminine approach to our issues as well and the way that we handle conflict, I think it would be a really incredibly healing thing for us on a personal level, but also too on a whole like worldwide scale. But again, too, I think we can also channel the fierceness and the wild, untamed aspect of the feminine and assert ourselves where we haven't been asserting ourselves. Where are we being too passive in our lives right now? And where are we taking a back seat in terms of Venusian aspects? All the things that we find worth in, all the things that we put our value and time and energy into, from beauty to romance to creative expression and arts, and also our money and our finances and our possessions. Where have some of these areas in our life become out of balance? And how can we channel and make use of all of the wisdom that Venus is bringing with her from sitting in Libra for the past 3-4 weeks? We can use that wisdom that Libra brings of establishing justice and harmony and balance and correcting all of these imbalances. Finishing the week off on November 22nd, the sun is entering the sign of Sagittarius and is emerging from the watery, intense depths that is Scorpio. And he's entering the fun-loving, fiery, passionate, go-getting sign of Sag. Sagittarius is represented by the archer. So you can think of Sagittarius as an archer roaming through a wide, endless field of limitless potential with exuberant and sometimes blind positivity. Where we were seeking the deep, dark truths with Scorpio sun, we are now looking for more universal truths with the sun being in Sag. The sun in Sagittarius is truly an explorer archetype. He is a visionary, he is an opportunist, he has a big heart with big goals and big ambitions, and underlined by good intentions. Sun in Sagittarius naturally creates this yearning within all of us for anything new and unexplored. There's an unyielding fascination with anything unknown that could potentially expand our minds and expand our awareness of life. Sagittarius is classically always looking for new philosophies and new ways of living and is interested in those types of topics. And so with the sun coming into Sagittarius, I think this is going to give all of us a much needed boost of vital life force energy and reinstill this zest and this general passion for life. We'll find that we are going to be happy to say yes to a lot of opportunities that come our way, especially if these are the kind of opportunities that are going to expand our knowledge, expand our awareness, just in general, expand our horizons mentally or physically. I think this is a great time too to pick up some sort of exercise regime or start a new sport. I know right now with most of the world going back into a lockdown state, it's hard to do any sort of outdoor exercising, especially with the Northern Hemisphere coming into the winter season. But there are so many free, amazing resources online that allow you to create a new movement, physical regime for yourself in the comfort of your own home. So I think ultimately that is going to be the main challenge, or one of the main challenges anyway, of Sagittarius season, is that it's bringing in a lot of social energy. It's going to make a lot of us want to socialize and spend time with our friends and get outside and make new friends, new connections. But again, with a lot of the world going back into a state of lockdown, that's going to be impossible, right? So I think that's one of the challenges that we're going to be faced with, and it's going to cause us to think of new creative ways to fill that need within ourselves. And especially with the holidays coming up too, I think that could potentially cause some of us to run into some more conflict when it comes to making holiday plans with family and friends. The kind of conflict where we might run into situations where it's like, oh, you chose to hang out with them, but not me. So I think a sense of self-awareness and a sense of intention is going to be the key and what's going to really help us navigate through any sort of potential conflict. Because the sun in Sag is very fun-loving and willing to say yes to almost anything, we will just want to be mindful to not overcommit ourselves to things and not say yes to everything and get ourselves into trouble in that regard. So again, just giving ourselves a chance to breathe and really sit with ourselves and ask, what do we want? How do we want to spend our time? And how do we want to enjoy ourselves? And be intentional about it. By asking the right questions, we will always find the most simple answers. And typically the most simple answers is what's best for Sagittarius. Another shadow side of Sagittarius is dogmatism. Because Sagittarius is associated with the planet Jupiter, and both represent, again, spirituality and religion and faith and higher education and belief systems. An overactive expression of the sun in Sagittarius is an inflated ego. One of my favorite astrologers, Rick Levine, does a phenomenal job of running through all 12 of the zodiac signs and explaining some of the common misconceptions of each of the zodiac signs. And the common misconception for Sagittarius is that there is this concept that there is nothing bad about Sagittarius. AKA, Sag can sometimes suffer from an inflated ego, an inflated sense of self, overly confident, and believing that what we know is ultimately right. So this is just something for us to watch out for throughout this Sagittarius season within ourselves and within others. We'll just want to keep ourselves in check in that way of not having too high expectations of ourselves and other people, for our egos will be large, but they will be fragile. And that's all I got for this week, guys. I think it's a good week. In all honesty, it could be worse. It could be worse because I feel like we've been dealing with some worse themes and energies over the past few weeks. So I think with the main focus being on Venus and Scorpio, again, I think if we choose to see the lighter side of things, we can make use of some really great aspects happening this week. And again, enjoy the sun coming into Sagittarius towards the end of the week. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. If you enjoyed this forecast, if you could hit the subscribe button, like, comment, share, 5-star, rate, review, wherever you're tuning into this. I know there's different words and ways to do it, but if you enjoy the show, if you could support in those ways, I would so appreciate it. You would be awesome. I am open for readings as well. I also do one-on-one astrological readings. So if that's something that you would be interested in, you can check the show notes and the links should all be available there. If there's anyone in your life that you think might benefit or enjoy this forecast, if you could share this with them as well, that would be awesome. And if you'd like to connect with me, feel free to reach out to me on social media or just say hey in the comments. I am more than happy to get to know you guys. And again, just see how this astrology is impacting your lives. If you're resonating with the readings, how it's been playing out for you. I'd love to connect and get to know how the 2020 year has been turning out for you. I hope you all have a beautiful week. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to other people. Be kind to yourselves. And I will see you next week.